Are Indians taking over Canada? I don't know. It's been a very hot topic these past few months, and we're going to get into it today on Talk the Tigs podcast right after this. Okay, so like I said before, the theme song, today we're going to be talking about the Indians in Canada. And when I'm talking about the Indians, I'm not talking about the Aboriginals, I'm talking about the Indians coming from India. There's been so many Indians that came from India into Canada for school purposes, and these are international students, right? So from one of those sources I have, and I believe it's named Forbes, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it says that about 123,000 Indians migrated to Canada about every year for the past 4 years from 2019. Well, 5 years now. So you guys do the maths and see how much of Indians that is that's coming. That's a noticeable number for Canada. That's not a very populous country. We only have about 34 million people. So when you have about half a million people come, you're definitely going to feel it. And the plan, I think it is, they said they want like 2 million or next million people to come within a certain amount of time. So they're prominent people, man. They're everywhere. You see them on the bus, you see them, they work in all the stores, all the call centers, all everything, you see them. Also, there's a city in Peel region that's named Brampton, and there's always been jokes poked at it because they call it like local India. The premier, or not even, I think he's some MP, Jagmeet Sai. He's the MP for Brampton, and that's the majority minority in that area in Brampton. And Brampton never started out like that. Brampton was a black people city like in the early 2000s, but from now it's completely changed. And leading into the next segment comes from the same Brampton thing. Like I said, everybody makes jokes of it, but the Indians have been facing a lot of racism in Canada, not just from people making fun of them, but also systematically. When they come to Canada, a lot of times if they don't have their selves, because what we always thought, and when I say we, I'm talking about the general public. A lot of people always make superstition and say that there's always 900 Indians living in a house in Brampton. They have their whole family, their girlfriend's family, the picking them, the parents them, and a lot of times that is what you see. But majority of the time recently, because of all the international students, many of them are renting places on like Facebook, they're renting places on Kijiji, and they're finding like little bandulu houses that they are staying in because it's cheaper, but also the landlords know what they're doing by taking in these type of people and having them sleep in our kitchen and in like basements. And if you see how these basements look, anyway, I want to play you guys an interview of a guy who's gonna explain it. And this was on CTV, my CTV Your Morning, I think it's called, and he's gonna explain a few things of how just it is being an international Indian student and the racism that is faced towards them from the white Canadians that are in charge of certain establishments.
Versus domestic students?
So what happens, this is something that I realized while I was studying as well, because a lot of power, the concept of power and society is something you understand while you're living here as well. You see, the landlord used to threaten me like, oh, if you guys do anything, I'm going to call the police and tell them you're doing illegal activities here. So you get a background problem and you can't clear your permanent residence check.
Right.
So he would threaten international students like that. Furthermore, international students do not know their rights, do not know what they can actually do against the landlord if they are being violated, because they're so new, they have no idea. So the landlords use this as a way to make sure that they get what they want, because at the end of the day, the student does not know their right. And they're the easiest ones to target, and especially because they're scared and away from family and don't really have anybody here.
So, you guys just heard what he had to say, and that sucks that has to happen. And that happens to a lot of other people other than just Indian international students. But like I said, it's been a hot topic because there's just so much of them. And especially here in Toronto, like they're everywhere.
Okay, I feel like there's too many brown people in Toronto.
Shout out to the Punjabis too. They've been fucking taking over.
No fuck.
Challengers,
No fucking bath.
Everywhere, bro.
Brampton, Raina. No, but okay, like have you seen the clips where like at Young and Dundas, it's just the whole of fucking Punjab is just there turning up?
They could party, man.
Yeah, again,
They're the most turned Indians. I'll say that.
Punjabi girls, bro. The Sahonias. But the thing is, I feel like, because like sometimes like I'll walk into a place and I'm like, holy fuck, there's a lot of brown people. Like too much. Like, you know, like to the point where like, listen. If I feel like there's too many brown people, imagine what the white guy feels.
You go downtown and in Young and Dundas Square, like you guys just heard the guys say in that podcast, you see videos on it on TikTok all the time. They're everywhere. They're in the square dancing, jumping around, you know, having fun. They're in Union Station. When I tell you that they're everywhere, they're everywhere. But a lot of people are being racist towards them because as Canadian people, as North American people now, I'm gonna care for what I say here because there's a lot of cultures and people in Toronto, and wherever we are, we act our certain ways. You know, people come to the black community and see us and say that we're all ghetto and say that we're all loud and crazy and don't know how to act and kill each other. People go around the Indians and say that they just jump around and they don't know how to carry on and they stink. A lot of people like to make fun of their smell and say that they're on the bus and they just stink up the place and their accents and they're rude. Now that is a portion of people. To label all the Indians like that, no, that's wicked and that's a lie to say. I've lived in many areas in Scarborough was predominantly Indian. Not, I shouldn't say exactly Indian. There was more Sri Lankans, but I've never, you know, experience it the way some of these people on TikTok carry on. The stuff they say that's so mean towards them, you know, but at the same time, it is different because we've never seen so much. And when I say so much, I'm talking about in the like there's literally thousands of them at times, and it's just them. It would be just Indians, and they're in public spaces where they've never been. So Canadian people, you know, those white people that don't really see before 2018, you've never seen these things. 2019, it just started to come around, but it's been extremely, well, what they say terrible these past few years, 2021, 2022, 2023. And, you know, our next problem that's come up is that people are saying that when they come from India, some of the people who are not international students, but come from India, they go in India, they do some type of scam. But when they're able to come up here and open businesses, they're not hiring anybody else other than the international students or their own Indian friends.
I know that's from Miss Sean. Miss Sean, you are racist. You are hiring only Indians. I applied here and I got rejected. I applied here and I got rejected. You are only hiring Punjabis. Yeah, it's true. I applied and I got rejected. I got rejected. I never did help. I never did help. Italian, thank God. Racist? My husband said he married me only for citizenship, and he called me a white trash girl. So don't tell me about racist. Really? He's a Punjabi, and he said all the Punjabis are the same. If you don't want me to be racist, then you should fucking be a nice person. And stop. I applied for a job here and I got rejected. What? Look how many Punjabis are working here. No, not because of this attitude, because you know exactly.
So you guys just seen that video and you guys can see that she seems genuinely upset, and most people in the comment section surprisingly were on her side because it is very true. You go a lot of places and like I was saying earlier in the podcast, it is Indian people everywhere that work. Like at Tim Hortons, so the drive-through, it's them. At Taco Bell, KFC, Popeyes, the gas station, everywhere. Call centers, Bell, Rogers, Telus, Fido, all of them. And what a lot of people get upset about is their accents and the lack of communication, which I'm gonna speak about. I'm not gonna lie. It does get frustrating at times, but we're in Canada. We're not used to hearing excuse me, we're not used to hearing accents. You know, it's literally 50% white, 50% mixed with everybody else. You hear Arab people, you hear Jamaican people, you hear African people, you hear Somali people, well, they're African people, but you hear all different types of people. You hear people with Chinese accent, you hear people with all types of accents. But a lot of people have been bullying the Indians, especially. A lot of Indians, international students, were outraged and started to say that Canada is not what we thought it was before we came here.
You're already creating the future in a depth. That won't lead to the benefit of students. That won't lead to the benefits of making a good career. It's a career which has already so much of pressure, and it's It's literally a darkness.
If that was the requirement when you first came here, would you?
I would have never ever planned to come in Canada. If like 20,000 was the requirement, I would have never ever.
We expect Canada as a land of opportunities. We can succeed here. We can be something. They are trying their best to give me money, to help me know my problems and everything. But adding 10,000 for them is also too much. There are many students which are facing difficulties here. They are going through a lot. It's a big step for us to come from our country to here to grow. We need an opportunity like to go up. We don't want it to be a burden.
So you guys just seen those videos, and while all this was going on, like I said, a lot of them are starting to go to food banks because with the price of rent, with the price of transportation, then they have to pay for their schooling and their books, and then they have to probably send back the money go India to, you know what I mean? It was getting expensive, and they wound up going to food banks. But here's where the problem with this whole situation arose. When they were going to the food banks, they were wiping out the food banks. Canada is in a very shit place right now. We have a government that doesn't know what they're doing. Inflation is crazy. Canadians that were born and raised here can't afford food, can't afford rent, can't afford clothes, can't find a job. There's so much things that Canadians can't do right now. We're all struggling, the whole nation. So a lot of Canadians were saying that it's not just the Indians. They're complaining about this, but you guys left their home, came here, and then is complaining about it while our government isn't doing anything for us. So while the Canadians needed to go to the food banks, when they would go, the food banks would have literally no food left. The food banks would have to put up signs saying that, we're out of food. And then they wind up having to put signs. They said, fuck this, and said, we're not just going to serve the international students no more because, like I was saying, a lot of Canadians are saying, you guys came from your own country and is wiping out the resources for the people that actually come from the country because our country is in not a good position right now.
Food banks have never been as important as they are today. In March, 2 million people used a Canadian food bank. But now some food banks aren't accommodating everyone anymore, and one type of client may no longer be welcome.
Is all these young kids coming with their backpacks saying they want help.
Here at St. Louis Outreach Food Bank in Brampton, students from outside the country aren't served anymore.
But they're just raiding anywhere to get anything they can. We can't handle that, everyone's running out of food.
Food Bank has a whiteboard out front during opening hours. It says government regulations allow it to exclude international students. But is there a policy? Somebody was telling my colleague that there's a policy.
I think it's on the window, sir.
The policy?
Yes.
The food bank posts a copy of what the government expects of international students coming to study here, that they be self-sufficient.
So, I can understand where the Indians are coming from because they're just trying to, better their life in a way. So they decided to come here, even though there was a lot of people that were using the system not correctly because 700 of them got deported one time. All at once. And when they got deported, it was because the office or wherever they filed their stuff from in India was doing a scam. And a lot of people were saying that the Indians knew and were pretending that they never knew but just got caught. But a lot of the Indians are saying we genuinely never knew. Now, coming from a place like Jamaica, and if you come from a place like a not so sophisticated country, not a first world country, you will run into a lot of places. Fuck that. In Canada, you run into a lot of scams. I shouldn't even have said that. But in those countries, Jamaica, Africa, India, you're going to find places that are not legitimate, that would push and do a few things that might be able to get you into Canada. But when you reach Canada, now you're a mess. In this case, that happened to about 700 people. Tree Bills Food, the #1 box food in the GTA, located in the East with prices you won't believe. Small soup, $3. Jerk chicken, $6. And a small oxtail, $8.50 on certain days only. We cater weddings, funerals, birthday parties, baby showers, and much, much more. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Tree Bills Food or call 416-554-5028.
700 students tricked by an immigration scam are being sent back to India.
Status! Status! We want status!
I'm outside Canada's immigration board where there's a rally going on after 700 students have been ordered to be deported back to India.
We pay taxes, we do all the legal things. After 4 years, they're saying go back. So the Canadian government used us and now they're just throwing us back.
We want justice! We want justice!
This comes after experts say most of them had their work permits, they had their work hours in, and it wasn't until recently that the Canadian Border Services Agency told the students that their admission letters to the schools were fake.
The 700 students were tricked by an immigration agent in India who wrote fake admission letters that Canadian universities accepted. The students even graduated and joined the workforce, only to learn years later that they were being deported because of that letter.
We gave him all the paperwork, we gave him the full fees, we paid everything. We are the victim, we are here to get the justice from the immigration.
When I call my parents, they always asking me, what about your PR? I'm telling a lie to them, my parents. We all are suffering from this situation.
International students pay almost 7 times more in tuition fees than local post-secondary students.
We agree we trust on a wrong guy who did this fraud thing, but what about the other authorities that has been issuing the study permit, the work permit? I personally feel there is a violation of human rights.
Students were stolen from. This is what is crucial to how Canada operates. If anybody pays the price for this, it will be students like this.
This is just one of many instances in Canada and the US where international students pay tens of thousands of dollars to find better opportunities, only to find that they've been scammed with no other solutions, advocates say.
You know, you guys just seen that, and that was from The Vice. I think you guys can go watch the full thing on their YouTube channel if you're interested. But I'm going to give my whole thoughts on this situation. And I truly feel like it is a lot. And I feel like our local government made this plan before they even, a lot of people are so surprised. From 2015 to 2014, been saying he was going to do this, and he did it. But what they did is that they never planned it good. When Justin Trudeau came into office, Canada was in a way better position than it is now. Oh my God, bring me back to 2015. If you see the prices of groceries, the prices of rent, the prices of taxes, everything was so much lower. The prices of gas, it was so much more livable in 2014, 2015, before Justin Trudeau took office in 2015. But it took a few years for it to get into the position that it was now. When he said that he was going to take the Indians in and the immigration, and he actually started doing it, and the country is in the position it's in, I don't think that he should have still been taking so much international students when there's literally Canadians, you know what I mean? Students in Canada that can't afford it, that are paying debt, that are stuck in debt, excuse me. There's people that are Canadians that can't afford rent, can't live nowhere, can't get a job, can't do all these things. And then when we see all these rules and all these implements and all these stuff and all these allowings of the Indian immigrants and the international students, it makes a lot of Canadians get upset. And I've seen a lot of Indians saying that don't blame us for your country's problems, which is so true. Don't blame the Indians. No, don't blame them at all, because they never affected this. Like I said, this started way before all the immigrants started showing up, because Canada could be in a position to take immigrants. It was built off immigrants. But with the condition that the country is in now, we are in no way. No way. So when all these plans were drafted up, we were in a much better position to accept you guys. Now, our retarded ass prime minister is still accepting them, but he's punishing everybody. International students, Canadians, everybody is suffering. So I feel like it is the government's job, and it's the government's fault to blame because they never did their job properly. I don't feel like it's the Indians' job to blame.
What do you think about Canada accepting 1 million immigrants every year? Do you think it's suitable?
I think the current immigration policy, I think there are too many immigrants coming into Canada currently. I think a lot of immigrants are not fleeing from war, and I think a lot are just coming to Canada because it does have better opportunities. However, that means Canadians who were born and raised here are not getting the opportunities they should be. And I think that Canada could keep accepting war immigrants and whatnot, and people that need humanitarian aid. However, at this point, there's too many immigrants coming into Canada, causing housing prices to go up, because Trudeau is slowing down permits to build more houses, and he's allowing more immigrants to come. So more people, less houses, higher prices for homes. So I think that we should slow down immigration, and it needs to be reworked.
As always, we have to do what's right for the country, right? So housing is an issue. People are coming here and they're not able to find housing or afford housing. These are things that have to be, looked at and adjusted, because it has to make sense for the country and for the economy. That's the most important thing.
We have our events where we walk in the streets and the streets is full, and the streets you would have swear is Jamaica. When you have some African events, you would have swear it's African. When you have Afro Fest, Jam Fest, Trinidad Fest, I mentioned Carabana already, Kitty Carabana in Vern. There's many places where it is so much black people you will feel almost overwhelmed if you're Indian. And it's always like this in Toronto. This is nothing new. Brampton and now, I've never lived in Peel Region, so I can't talk to how it is in Brampton. But buses being full, I've always seen it. We live in a city with 8 million people. The greater Toronto area has probably about 10, 12 million people. Every bus is full. Everywhere you go, you're going to find that. Brampton is a predominantly Indian area. You're going to find Indian people on the bus. If you go to Jane and Finch and you come to some Scarborough area and you go to some area in the west and Rexdale and Mount Olive and all them places there, and you're going to see majority black people, majority Somalian people on the bus. If you go to Markham, you're going to see majority Chinese people on the bus. If you go downtown, you're going to see predominantly white people and all other types of people and rich people. And no matter where you go in Toronto, in the GTA, there's certain demographic of people. Yes, the Indians are a lot more now than we've ever seen, but is it something for the people to be carrying on the way they are on TikTok? No, you're just looking for something to be upset about. But the Indians, them, that I've experienced, I've worked with many of them through Tree Builds. Many of them are my customers, and they've came right every time. They've ordered every time. I do business with many of them as business partners, not just customers, and I've never had an issue with them. So I feel like the whole international crisis, the international student crisis, is caused by our government, not the students. I feel like it's probably going to get used to some of these country bunkins who's never been to Toronto to probably get used to seeing a couple of Indians. But as a person who's grew up in Scarborough, Indians they've always, have you fucking been to Tuxedo Court? Have you been to, well, even though, like I said, those are more Sri Lankans. Have you been to Malvern? Have you been to, and when I say Malvern, I'm not talking about Empringham sides. I'm talking about Blackwell sides near the mall, where the people them who go to Hilliard, the people them who go to Pearson, so they're everywhere. They've always been everywhere. I just, like I said, I think it's just a few country bunking people who've probably never been outside or some shit. But that's my thoughts on this whole situation. You guys let me know what you think about it down below. Do you think that there's just too many Indians? Or do you think the same thing that I think, that they've always been here? Of course, they're here in greater numbers, but the crisis that they're facing is due to our government, not them. Let me know what you guys think, and we'll talk next time on Talk the Things podcast.
Hey girl, you can't style me, mama. While I reach, you get a brand new man and nuts. Fine by me, move up you. Find happiness, move up you. Enjoy it, and when things don't work, I hope you don't call me, become not no fool. Don't need you, and in my type, I'm
If you're planning an event from now until the end of March, I have great news. Tree Bills Food is offering 30% off caterings and 15% off box food. Enter promo code MeHungry at the end of your order to receive the discount. Once again, the promo code is MeHungry, MIHUNGR, all caps.